Hey guys, Frank here. I'm going to show you today how to tie an alevin fly using a tube, obviously a eumer tube. In this case, you can see the shape of this tube called a teardrop. It's an awesome tube that really can sink really quickly. The great thing about this tube also, or any kind of tubes in this case or in this matter, would be that we can slide and add more weight if desired. Or it doesn't have to be a weighted tube. It could be also a straight plastic tube that we would probably cover with mylar tubing if we wanted to create just more of a floating action minnow. So in this case, we're going to tie just a little alevin fly. We're going to be using these materials, super simple. A little bit of hot glue on the side. Obviously, we're going to create a bit of an egg sac that looks very real. There is a few different ways to mimic that egg sac if you don't have the hot glue. One of those would be using a tad bit of Arctic Fox. You could just clump it a little bit, obviously in a shorter length, and then create a bit of... You gotta remember, once it's wet, it really does have a nice action underwater. So in this case, eyes, super important, obviously in any kind of alevin or any fry pattern. I think personally that the fish really do key on this aspect. And super glue, my best friend. Obviously, I hate tying knots, super lazy. And you'll need a lighter also just to melt the end of your tubes. So we'll get going in 1 second. Just get your stuff all ready. And by the way, this is a little... very small little strip of squirrel, sculpin squirrel we call. So really skinny tiny piece. We're only going to use a very small piece. Could be olive, could be natural, it doesn't really matter. Just remember, usually like fry in early part of their lives are not very flashy right away. Okay, so first thing we need to do is to put the sleeve into the tube. So in this case, we're gonna melt the back end of it a little bit so it doesn't run away on us. So usually what I like to do is just melt it very slowly, just trying to make it look flat. And let it harden before you slide that sleeve up a little bit, because otherwise you'll see it might not hold that well. Then we put it on your tapered eumer vise, which is great. Eumer has this attachment also that you can put on your regular vise that actually fits almost every single company's of tubes as well. So here's my body. The first thing I want to basically do is I'll create flies. I usually don't tie one at a time, but in this case I'll show you guys how to do this. But I would do a batch of different ones. So first thing first, the hardest one is probably to put the hot glue the way we really want it. So what I'm going to try to do is put the eyes first, and I will just cover the bottom end of the hot glue. Then we'll try to glue everything together after. So before I even tie anything, these should just hold on a little bit. If not, sometimes just add a little bit of super glue in the back of them. You gotta remember that it looks pretty flimsy like this, but once we start putting glue to this, this is where it's gonna get very fun to play with. So obviously the weight of the fly is going to be where the glue comes out of. Nice and slow. It doesn't matter if it's not perfectly round, just remember that an alevin is never perfect. So you can shape it a little bit with your finger and make sure you don't burn yourself. In this case it's not holding too well, so Now to harden this, we can shape it after, but usually we'll drop it in cold water real quick. Like I just hit there. Just to make sure it hardens for us. Come on. You can already see how realistic this looks. So now, I'm just going to wait and dry it for a second. So it's barely holding there, obviously, at first. Till we apply the magic ingredient, super glue. Best friend for the job. We just apply it on the tube and basically move it around a little bit until it sets. And trust me, it will set. Now I'm going to tie off a little bit of thread on top of this. And tie a little bit of my squirrel zonker. Usually about an inch long piece. I'm going to add on top of it. You could almost tie this fly without any thread at all, judging that you're using glue. And that's pretty much it, guys. Oops. You can tie a dozen of these in no time at all. If this happened, I just didn't pull this back enough. There we go. You can crank these up, gosh, a dozen an hour, if not more. Just remember, super glue is good. Not too much, sometimes it can burn your stuff. So just remember, nice and slow, find the shape you're looking for and leave it as is. So this is good because the front's pretty stiff, but the back's going to be very flowy, and that's what we're looking for here. One thing is I can add, depending on what kind of minnows you're looking for, is you can grab a felt pen and put little black dots along the body collar. So in this case, that's a bit of an olive natural. You can go white, you can go a lot of different colors, right? And just remember, the alevin stage is only a stage of life. It doesn't last too long. So also you can tie these basically just a little bit bigger without the egg. Just remember, the eyes needs to be glued really well. In this case, they're holding up real good. They're not going anywhere. And tied off, obviously, with super glue, you don't need to tie too much. And when you're about to finish the fly, just remember to cut about 1 millimeter or 2 above and melt the front end, and you have yourself a nice little killer fly. For more information, www.seetheskyfly.com or frankbfly@yahoo.ca. You guys have a good day. So this is what my little alevin is going to look like once it got wet. I just want to show you guys the profile of it. You can always add color. It's an awesome little fly. In this case, it's going to sink, so I like to fish this with either a dry line or even like a fairly heavy sink tip, and then just basically slowly drag it at the bottom. Just remember, you can also add the sleeve at the back and put the hook upwards so it doesn't get stuck at the bottom.